All right, guys, welcome to the first episode of Behind the Hedge, where we're going to be giving an inside look into landscape contracting, and hopefully through this, it'll be something that we're learning as we're talking, but we're sharing with maybe potential homeowners, business owners, other contractors out there. One thing we wanted to start off with was landscape planning and installation, why planning your landscape installation is worth it. I'm your host, John Richter. I have Josh Cabral, who is our Director of Design and Estimating, Charles Barefoot, our Director of Installation. So guys, we're going to jump right into it. And today we'll be talking about what we've learned 21 years of business this year, and why, that's right. But why is it so important to plan? Because ultimately we want to make sure that our clients have a good experience, that we're budget conscious, that we're saving money, adding value to properties, and also to having the proper selection. So of course our landscape thrives, because we've been in situations before where we've had an owner that maybe worked with a designer and then had another contractor's opinion and then asked us and said, all right, well, hey, we want to use you guys. And we have this plan, we're ready to go with this plan. And then we price something, but then all of a sudden another revision of the plan comes out, and we experienced that, and it ended, and it was just a disaster. It was frustrating on us. It was frustrating on the homeowner, everybody involved. It was just a frustrating process. We want to talk about some things where we avoid those things. Before we get into it, and a lot of times we talk about landscape installation projects. Of course, we know that this is landscape plant material. It can be a hardscape, it can be irrigation, it can be outdoor construction, but what are some of these other projects that we have beyond just landscape, what people naturally think of with plants? So what are some of the other projects that we get involved in?
Number one, drainage for me.
Yeah.
There's been quite a few that we've been involved with, that going through 3 homeowners' yards to do something that a city may or may not have said, hey, you're on your own, fix it. Outdoor kitchens, pool stuff.
Yeah, it was going more outdoor kitchen, gazebo, patio, covered porch, screen porch. Like your outdoor space, your landscape contractor should be able to handle.
And that's something that's really evolved over the years, is like landscape construction has really, it is evolved into construction for these outdoor spaces. So we've gone well beyond just plants and grass. So we are doing a lot more of these structures. And oftentimes I'll hear being like, I had no idea that you guys did that. Yeah. And so there are a lot of talented landscape contractors that can do a lot of really good work, which involves pools and, of course, doing drainage and doing driveways and a lot of stuff. So, yeah.
Tying in utilities and all the fun stuff. Really.
All the things, you would say. Yeah. So what are some of the reasons that sometimes that our owners want to skip the planning, the detailed, the really thoughtful planning? What are some of the things y'all think that they skip on the planning phase?
I would say either excitement for the project, and I guess, yeah, just excitement for the project in general, or like looking at an area and wanting to know they improved it, but hadn't involved anybody until the point of, I've got to fix it now.
Yeah.
And then it's timeline. If I do this whole planning phase, I don't have it in a month. I have it in 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah, excitement or wanting to jump into it. And unfortunately, if it comes down to want to save cost, not having an architect involved or an engineer if it's needed, it's usually not a good thing.
Yeah.
Let's plan, especially if you've got a whole yard that you want to turn upside down into this big magnificent thing.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you both on kind of both of those things. The excitement leads into, hey, we're ready to do this project. And this is where I think people don't quite understand the complexities that will go into some of these landscape projects. And there are a lot of steps. Yeah. Not to overly complicate it, but people always associate building a home, oh, wow, that's very detailed. But there are similar processes in building a landscape construction project that require the same things from the ground up to completion.
Oh, yeah.
So,
especially when you're tying in walls and patios, because guess what? They all have footers and foundations that hold all that stuff together.
Yeah. So talking about some of the key benefits as far as planning ahead, we can talk about budget control. We can look at a thoughtful design, the seasonal timing, permits, regulations, and then just ultimately scheduling. So what are some of the things around the budget control that, how do we help out clients? What are some of the things that clients can do better as far as some of that, the budgeting control?
I would say reduction in plant size, or like just knowledge of how much the next plant size cost you? Or same way with like your hardscape material. You want a bluestone, but do you really want a bluestone? Because a bluestone is going to carry a number with it, where a gray flagstone that looks the same doesn't carry the same dollar value.
Yeah.
Yeah, having realistic expectations and not stay off Google sometimes. Yeah, I saw this beautiful patio in California. Those materials are readily available in California, not here in Alabama.
Yeah. That is one thing. I mean, while the internet is great for a lot of research and data, the pricing of it sets a big false expectation of budget on some of the mislabeled materials, and even misnaming some plants in some areas. But yeah, I definitely think that that budgeting, and again, going back to there's so much objectivity with a landscape plan. It's easier, I think, for a home builder, or commercial contractor. There's an established kind of a square foot price to build, and some of these ideas, and like with the landscape, because of the variable, I mean, choosing a 3-gallon plant to a 7 to a 15, that's a big swing.
Yeah.
2.5-inch tree to a 5-inch caliper tree. That's a lot of difference. So to be able to establish and say, this is how many square feet, you just can't build the same budget.
No.
I think a lot of times people are a little surprised.
No, I
when
feel
they
like
get
there's
the
a
initial
lot of
number
people
back.
that like, I want to do this. What would be a good budget number? And until you define the areas of how much square foot each piece is going to take up, there's not really a good way of doing that in a landscape setting.
And two, the next step is we talk about design a good bit, and we do some in-house design, but then we also too rely on landscape architects that have worked with homeowners that will send us drawings that will work, so we can do both sides of it. That budget piece is always an interesting number. I know that's one of our qualifying questions. We try to understand, hey, what is a target number that you have? And a lot of times homeowners don't want to reveal because they think, okay, we're just going to run it up to that number. And that's not what we're asking, because of, again, we talk about size, we talk about the creativity. I mean, like, it's easy to overbuild on paper.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes even when we get a drawing from a landscape architect, we price it and we've asked, is there a target number? They don't even have the target number yet. And then we price it, then they submit it, and then there's just this shock and awe. So it's sometimes tough. Where does the budgeting conversation come in with talking to a contractor, talking to an LA? That's where it's really important, I think, to have a good, solid team to put the two together, because the architects don't always understand the labor cost and don't always understand plant costs. We work with it every day. They're seeing pricing coming in from different areas. But I do think that thoughtful design is a big step in the planning process. So would y'all agree?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And I would also think that the more detail on a plan,
The better.
the better.
The more detail you can get out in the beginning of the project, especially before it starts, the better that project will go.
Yeah.
There's some LAs that are better than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of that hinges, what I've seen is like with the landscape architects that we work with, they can put in tons of detail, like tons of detail. But the more detailed, the more hours they spend. And so they have their proposal just like we do, where the homeowners be like, oh, no, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And then ultimately you're like, man, you're not fine. Those details would actually save money, right? Another thing with our industry is like the seasonal timing. So what does that mean to y'all as far as that seasonal timing? How important is that for the owners to communicate with us? And
I think the biggest thing in seasonal timing I think of often is just trees, because there's only a certain time of year that trees can be dug, and there's only so many available. When they're out, and you're waiting until they dig next year.
The boxwoods too. I love it. Anytime I see something over 30 inches, I cringe.
we're going to start naming plants now. It's about to get personal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And and two, even with the construction, I mean, like, we're just now coming out of the winter months, and man, in the winter it's so challenging because, I mean, just the job that we were on, there was a big masonry element, and it went, week and a half, 2 weeks, that the builder was not able to do any of the hardscape because of freezing temperatures.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's not, they have the guys ready to go, but they can't. And then therefore it delays us being able to start doing grade work and everything. So that's a big one. And then I think another thing that gets missed, permits.
Yeah.
So what's been y'all's experience with permits? Because You're on the design side of it and sales.
Yeah.
And then, Charles, you get ready for production.
Anything in a historic district,
Just say no.
yeah, it's tough. It really is, because you have to go through that neighborhood committee, and then you have to go see the committee with the city, and then they all have to come together and align.
Yeah.
And you've got to come prepared. You
Right.
have to come with the design, all the
Specs
the materials you use. Sometimes they want examples.
and colors.
Yes,
All of it
yes.
matters in a
So-
historic
It really does.
district.
So what we've learned is the HOAs move a little faster than the historic districts.
Oh, 100%. No, 100%.
They do move faster. They do move faster.
But man, it turned out to be a beautiful project.
It did.
It was a good project. It was very functional. Solved the
issues.
big issue. So yeah, that
did.
was good. Yep. And then we talk about timing, but then also too, like contractor scheduling, talking about having a good plan. What we've seen homeowners that are really thoughtful, really planned out. We talk about that excitement. They're ready to go. They may want to use a particular contractor only to find out, man, their schedule, their backlog, so that when to start communicating with the contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those permits too. Those permits take time and that whole schedule too.
Yeah.
So they could be there the same way. The weather, they could be there, but permits aren't issued, so we're not working.
I remember one of my favorite projects that we've done just in most recent memory. The very first time that we met with the LA, because of just the complexity, we definitely needed a landscape architect with the details and sophisticated project. But it was going to be several months before the LA had the drawings. And then when we priced and got it in, it was almost a year before we actually started construction on the job, because we did want to wait to get out of the winter months to start the project. And because of the planning, the drawing, the revisions, the price, we got it into budget, and then it went to schedule. And it was because of, again, the timing and the sequence of it, it turned out to be one of our smoothest projects that we operated. And it turned out to be one of the more pretty projects that we had completed. And I mean, if you tell most homeowners, hey, it's going to be a year before you actually have a finished product, that may lose a job.
Yeah.
But the end result turned out to be like a
Slam dunk,
magazine published job. So
It's few and far between, but the homeowners that understand that whole process, they usually have a little bit more gray.
and it helped that he was a general contractor working on large jobs that understood that process. Didn't wasn't necessarily excited to find out about that timeline, but he knew the LA, wanted to use our services, so that was pretty cool. It's a good project, but good stuff. All right, what can be some of the common challenges, some of the pitfalls when poor planning? So we've talked about some good planning and the strategies of planning. What about some of the pitfalls that we run into with poor planning?
Not clear communication, maybe starting ahead of time, but not having like that kickoff meeting to really get the job going.
And that's on us. Like
100%,
last thing that we don't do is, hey, we don't have our share of issues. We get busy and
Yeah.
don't follow good steps, good procedures. And you just brought up the kickoff meeting. That's something that we're really trying to do a much better job. I'm having our pre-construction meeting internally, but then also have that kickoff meeting on the job site just to make sure, hey, we're all clear.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even this morning, I didn't share this with you, but I'll share it now. Meeting with Shannon, I was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna start at the back and tear your whole driveway out." And she was like, "Wait a minute, it's not the whole thing." And I was like, "You know what? You're right. It's not the whole thing. It is just the beginning." I was like, "I'm so glad you came outside."
Surely you weren't going to demo the whole project. Yeah.
I wasn't, but there for a brief moment, I really did. I was
Just in demo mode.
I was excited because they need it. But
Let's be honest, you love concrete.
it's a good stuff, really.
The fact he went and poured some yesterday.
Yeah, he's got to get his hands in the mud.
Yeah.
Got to get it in the mud. And then finishing it. Like, this is the last thing you want to do is leave it for somebody else to finish. You want to put the broom stroke in it, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I do. Turns out right.
You're so crafty.
Yeah.
It's craftsmanship, core value.
But back to pitfalls and stuff, that could have been detrimental.
Yeah.
It really could. And I laughed with her, and it wasn't going to be a good conversation to have at all.
And that was part of the original conversation, was doing the whole thing versus just doing the segment. And
That's right. We went back and forth on it a little bit. Small project, but at the end of the day, it could have turned into a big headache.
Yeah.
Huge nightmare for yours truly.
Right. Yeah. Man, I'll tell you another one, starting off with maybe some poor planning. You start getting into that word that owners don't want to ever hear is change order.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you get into the job and maybe the thought process, I found out owners get really creative when they start seeing the landscape come to life, and now the add-ons happen. And yeah, it's a change order, but it's something the owners want. They request it.
Yeah.
And then that scope creeps. That seems to always be a tough one to deal with just because of what's going to happen downstream of the schedule.
Adds more time to their project, pushes the next project back another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me at how they don't have the visual for it just yet. It's like you said, that we started getting out there moving stuff around. They're like, oh, I see it now. I'm like, yeah, you do, don't you?
Yeah.
We're going to change some stuff, aren't we?
Yeah.
That's where this is.
And most of the time, as far as like when it comes to, we don't have too many owners that are saying, hey, here are all the plants that I want. But every once in a while, we will get a plant that's spec'd, and maybe it's not through us. And it's a plant that would work, but it becomes an environment, a challenge plant. Maybe some nurseries have not seen great results, and they don't have the availability of that plant. And we're learning that, man, that plant just doesn't winter well. Usually it's the plants that don't make it through our winters.
Yeah.
That really go into decline. So that's one thing that can be tough on poor planning is like not really making smart plant decisions. Yeah. And then I guess the other thing are some of those little delays. We talk about the scope that maybe wasn't identified in a plan, and then the owners think, hey, we have this drawing, we have these things, hey, and we're like, hold on, we've actually got to get, you mentioned engineered drawings. There may be a wall that exceeds the requirements that require an engineered drawing, but there's no engineer stamp on that drawing. And so now we've got to get an engineer to get it stamped, to get it down, to get it approved, to be able to get it permitted. That adds real time.
It does.
Real time.
Unfortunately, it's not really foreseen by the homeowner until we come along. And they're thankful for that, but sometimes it's just, again, it's a sticker shock. Like, gosh, we haven't even started, and we got to do more.
And you can't, they could have a big backlog at whatever municipality. You can't speed that. You can't expedite that process.
Oh,
Sometimes it goes fast, but typically when the owner's ready to get something going, it's always slower.
And you're not getting the city to do anything quicker than what they're moving.
No.
They're going to move at their pace.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would be some of our, as far as if we could say, all right, here are the pro tips for success. Would y'all say the best tip we could give as contractors, this whole concept, our tagline of behind the hedge, behind the scenes, would working with a professional architect or professional designer be like the number one thing we could pass on to owners to start working with?
Absolutely.
yeah.
100%. It's without a shadow of a doubt.
And especially if you're getting multiple contractors to bid your project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that way everybody's bidding against the same package.
So that's a good point. All right. On this multiple contractors, how many times have we had an owner, and it can be residential, it can be commercial, hey, we'd love for y'all to price this job. We're working with somebody else. We're getting a couple of bids, and then they give us a spec, and there's not really a design to go along with it. And then we submit, and they're like, we kind of what y'all suggested based on this, and then all of a sudden we have these two different numbers. Have y'all ever seen that work out?
No. I've never seen it work out. It works.
Yeah.
You get prices.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested, too, to know how many homeowners end up with the desired result of their project in that scenario.
I agree with you. And I was going to say a lot of times when we've been in the middle of that, because it starts to deviate a little bit, this isn't what the other guy said. And we're like, we need a plan. This is why it's important to have a plan. It goes back to that plan. So that's a pitfall, having contractors without a set drawing to say, this is the drawing we're planning off of.
I will have to say, too, and just thought in my brain, but when looking at timeline, I don't know if I would look at start time as much as I would finish time when you want to enjoy it. Because certain contractors will get there sooner, but
Right.
are they going to finish before?
Yep.
Is an issue we've come
That's a
across
really
in the
good point.
past.
We lost a job last fall
Yeah.
because it was halfway through the growing season. We told the owner we couldn't start until October based on our backlog and missed the job.
Yep.
And she really wanted to work with us, missed the job. And then we come to find out that it was like
Oh, they're still not done.
they're still not finished with the job.
No, they are still at her house
And our timeline, what we understood is she wanted it to be completed.
by Christmas. And she would have had it completed by Christmas.
That's why we did not want to start the job until we could put all of our resources. And I'll admit there have been times where I've forced a start date on you. You don't have your available resources. There are too many other outliers of just jobs going on, and then you're stretched and you don't have all of your resources together, whether it be people, whether it be equipment,
Trucks,
trying to get the material, you name it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's foolishness on my part because I'm trying to make somebody happy. Oh, yeah, we can get there. To your point, Josh. Yeah, we can get started on that time. And we can have this job finished on this day.
No
Great.
change orders or any of the other stuff
True.
in there. But
True.
Yeah, when you can say that with confidence, that
Yeah.
usually gets you the job. If they're thinking in that mindset, hey, we can
Right.
be finished by this
Well, that's
day.
the last thing
an
we want
excellent
to do is
point.
show up and fail. We want to do really good work and do a schedule. And that's one thing I think that like owners know, hey, this is our schedule. This is our timeline. This is when we want to end the job. And they know if they come out and add more work, they understand that the schedule moves. Yeah. But I think we've gotten much, much better. We've learned painfully, slowly. I've learned to.
I learned from my failures, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I've also learned to trust you. And you have a great quote. You're like, man, it's not good news. It's not bad news. It's news.
Just news.
So it's, hey, these are the facts. This is what we can do. But yeah, good stuff. We talk about timeline. So we even talked about some of the stuff that we had learned. We talk about our schedule being somewhat flexible. So I guess in recap as we're closing, any other thoughts around this planning and putting things together and running a smooth project? Because that's ultimately what everybody wants. They want a really quality project. They want to see it come in on time. They want it to come in on budget. And then they want to just have a good experience and say, hey, it was wonderful. It's what we want.
Yeah, ultimately a really good plan to go into it. And I know we've talked about having architects and designs, but it not necessarily always the case because it's really how much you want to do, how big's the scope. As long as there's a good plan and we can follow that plan, it can be a simple project. It can be a complicated project as long as there's not too many elements. But if we can get the plan down and everyone's on the same page, we can execute it. And those jobs go really well.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, some of the key benefits to that is, I mean, man, it's going to save them money. Yeah. It's going to save them stress. It's going to save everybody time. And then the results are what everybody wants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I guess we would encourage anybody that's listening to this podcast, whether you're a contractor, to put some of these practices in place, making sure, hey, a solid designer is in place, a landscape architect, communicate that to your homeowner, pass that along, get a really good defined scope of work. And then for our homeowners or owners in general, whether it be a home or a business, making sure that they understand that, hey, some of this stuff, it takes time, it takes good planning to be able to get the results that they want. I guess we want to encourage anybody, if they need help, we're here. We want to help in this capacity just by doing this show. That's our desires as we talk and learn, sharing what we're learning, maybe being helpful to owners, helpful to other clients. So never hesitate to give us a shout if we can help you out. But we'll wrap up episode number 1 of Behind the Hedge. Thanks for your time, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
All right.
Yes.
Sounds good.